How's it going? Um, Welcome back to another episode. I sort of did some stuff behind the scenes because this boss here takes a while to kill. So I chipped him down to like the last the last hit point, so you can see him die. But it would have taken too long, and you gotta concentrate because you gotta dodge his poison attacks. But so this is it. We're just gonna kill him quickly. Bam! There he explodes. It's good to kill these insects. You feel no mercy for them. So anyway, um, moving on. My goddamn diet videos were a complete failure. Apparently, everyone hates being told what to eat. And who am I to tell you what to eat? So I suppose I understand. um, I don't know. I just thought it was interesting, but apparently nobody else did. So I'm truly sorry about that. I guess we're just gonna have to keep talking about my treatment, which is what everyone wants to hear all the time. Um, so that's exactly what we're gonna do. Oh, and by the way, I realized we had like 12 million skill points to spend, so I spent them on this thing here, Shield Charge, which is really cool, and some rune stuff here. I'm not sure what they do, but they're pretty cool. So anyway, today what we're gonna talk about is actually just sort of like not a spoiler, but like an idea of what it's going to be about is the most painful thing I've ever had to endure in my life. Not psychological, not spiritual. Hold on, let me just put the yeah, not psychological, not spiritual pain, purely physical pain. Uh, and it has to do with that thing that I was really afraid of, that I talked about in one of the last episodes, which was the needle in the back. But let me tell you the story from the beginning. So after around a month and a half, I think maybe even 2 months, the doctors had brought down my infection level to around 40 or 20%. I'm not sure. So the percentages sort of mix up in my head. I'm not even sure how long it took for us to, get down to 20. But basically, they told me, listen, we got to give your body a break because we've been giving you chemo for so long that, there could be permanent damage if we don't let you go home and rest a little bit. Plus, it's been proven, like scientifically, that um, if you take a break like this and you go back to family and talk with them and hang out with your friends, that has a huge effect, a huge benefit on your recovery from chemo in general. So they're like, you can go home. And I'm like, really? This isn't a joke? And they're like, nope, no foolsies. This is for real. You can go home, but only for like, I think it was a week and a half. And then you're gonna come back and the same bed's gonna be waiting for you and everything. But I was happy. So I went home, and the coolest thing when I got home was, of course, seeing my family and meeting my friends and my girlfriend, like outside of the hospital. But like outside of meeting people, sunlight was like the biggest thing for me. I remember I put my hand out and I almost cried. Like I was on the street and I was like, holy crap, like sunlight. I had forgotten what it feels like to have the sun on your skin. And the doctors had told me, whatever you do, stay out of the sunlight. But like they told me that you can actually be in the sunlight, but only after around 6 p.m. because of the angle of the sun. It has to do with the atmosphere. Basically, most of the UV light is filtered with the atmosphere. If the sunlight is passing, if it's sunlight after 6 or 4 or 5 or 6, depends on the time of the year. So after 6, I was allowed to touch the sunlight, and that was one of the biggest things. Also, food. I became very, very hungry, and I ate all the time. I had to take a lot of medication, which is basically the same thing I have to do now. But all in all, it was like amazing to me for me to go back home. But all good things come to an end usually. And That's a blue item right there, I believe. No, it's not. So yeah, we went back. It was kind of depressing, but at the same time, I was a little relieved because I got kind of obsessed with, like, if we stay too long without chemo, the infection is gonna, skyrocket again. So I was like, okay, let's just get back, to the chemo and get this over with as soon as possible. So that's what we did. And unfortunately, one of the first things I had to do was to get stabbed in the back with that thingy. And so they were like, okay, we're gonna have to take a sample from your back, from your spinal fluids, and we're gonna have to inject you with chemo into your spine and things like that. And I'm like, oh boy. So I look at the doctors that are gonna do this to me, and I notice it's not the guy that I trust. It's not the guy with the magic fingers. And I'm like, who the hell is this? And it was a woman. She's like, don't worry, I was there when the other guy did it, so I know exactly how to do it. And I'm like, well, that's all fine and dandy, but that doesn't mean you've got the skill. And she's like, don't worry, everything's gonna be okay. And I'm like, crap, that's exactly what you don't say. That's exactly what you don't say when you stab someone in the back. So I was like, oh crap, well, I gotta trust these people, because you can't, if you start doubting them, they start shaking their head, their hands start shaking. That's just, you gotta show trust, if you don't trust the doctors, they're gonna start doubting themselves. And so I was like, okay, let's just trust her. Well, I don't know what happened. To this day, the doctors never admitted what happened, but it was something terrible. Basically, they stabbed me. I noticed that there was pain this time, like actual pain in my back. I was like, oh God, I'm gonna puke. I was like feeling out of breath. I didn't want to breathe because I felt like every time I breathed, the needle would be moving in me. And so I'm like, oh, Long Johnson. I was like, oh no, I'm gonna die here. And she was like, okay, we did it. Everything's done. Everything was a complete 100% success. And I was like, I don't know. It feels weird. And she's like, oh, don't worry. It's gonna be fine. So I lay down and I stay there for 2 hours because I was like, just in case, because I felt it was kind of weird, so let's give it a little more time. Not 1 hour, but I'm gonna lay there for 2 hours and let's see what happens. And boy, oh boy, when I got up, I felt my back was completely screwed. Like, I could feel my legs and everything, but I just felt like there was something like electricity running through my spine. And I'm like, I called the doctors and they're like, that's completely normal. That's like the most normal thing in the world. Don't worry. And I'm like, okay. And I went to sleep. The next day I wake up with a pain that I could barely like breathe. I remember I got up and I couldn't, like, my muscles were sort of like locked. And I couldn't put my body up. And I called the doctors, the nurses, and then the doctors, and they checked my back, and they're like, well, we don't see anything wrong with it. Are you sure this isn't in your head? And I'm like, God damn it, of course it's not in my head. And they're like, okay, well, we can give you painkillers, but we don't think it's anything serious. So they gave me something called tramadol, which is a sort of opiate. It's similar to morphine, but it's not as strong. And the pain went away. Wow, the pain, I literally felt nothing. And I thought the problem was solved, but it wasn't. Because for some reason, to this day, I don't know what happened, but for some reason, I think the nurses gave me too much tramadol, or they increased the rate of injection, because it's sort of like a drip system. It's like tramadol drips into your blood slowly. It's supposed to go like 1 drop every hour or something, but I think the nurse put it for like a whole bag. Oh, what's that? A whole bag in like under a minute. And for those of you who don't know, if you take tramadol way too quick, if you don't do it drop by drop, you get this what I can only describe as the most intense vomiting session you can ever imagine. And that's exactly what happened to me. So imagine the tramadol is no longer affecting my back, so I have pain like you can't even imagine. Just a 10 out of 10 easily, and I think I have a good pain tolerance, but 10 out of 10 pain. They gave me tramadol because of the pain, and it's not going away, and so they're increasing the drip rate. Suddenly the tramadol is having an effect on me. I'm puking my guts out. So all the doctors are like, what is it? What could it possibly be? And they're like, oh no, you know what it is? It's probably meningitis. I'm like, you're kidding me. Like, please don't tell me I've got meningitis. Because for those of you who don't know, meningitis is the worst. Meningitis is the absolute worst. First of all, you could die. But second of all, like it's got the worst possible symptoms you can imagine. Meningitis, if you've had it, you know what I mean. And they were like diagnosing me with meningitis, and I'm like, please, Lord, please don't tell me I've got meningitis. Like, that would be such a kick in the nuts. Do I deserve this, really? So I'm there in pain, and I'm like, okay, what do we do? And they're like, we got to do a CAT scan of your entire back. So basically a torso CAT scan and part of the head too. So like a head and torso CAT scan. And they did it, and they're like, it's very interesting. There doesn't seem to be any damage to your meninges. And I'm like, well, obviously something's wrong. And they're like, well, okay, yes, but we don't know what it is. And so I spent a month and a half in pain, absolute pain. They stopped the tramadol because it wasn't helping. So the puking stopped, but you could say it. Well, no, I didn't spend a month. I think I must have spent 2 weeks, but 8 of those days were spent puking in pain. Yeah, that's what happened. And then another week or so of not puking, but still a lot of pain. And the puking, luckily, what sort of proved to us that it wasn't meningitis is when you've got meningitis, your vomit is sort of like if you've watched the movie The Exorcist. You know how the girl sort of pukes and it's like a fountain coming out of your mouth. That is a sign of meningitis. And luckily I wasn't puking like that. I was puking normally, but let's say imagine 20 times a day. That's how much I was puking. Eventually you stop puking anything because there's no more digestive fluids in your system. So you're just like doing a gag reflex basically. And then after the puke, when you're no longer puking anymore, because you know the tramadol was no longer in my system, I stopped puking. But I had puked for so long, so many times per day, that I had a serious hiccup problem. I was having hiccups like crazy. My diaphragm was in so much pain, and it wasn't helping that the movement sort of exacerbated the back pain too, because you know it's all connected. So I was in a lot of pain, and the doctors didn't know what to do. I refused any painkillers. The only thing I accepted was paracetamol, and plus I wasn't allowed to take any other painkillers because of the medication I was taking. It wasn't compatible. So everyone was sort of freaking out. They also did another test for meningitis, which is that they would do this to my neck. And let me tell you, that was the most painful thing of all. I remember 2 of the doctors, because they kept changing doctors. I think they were running out of ideas, and they were bringing in more and more senior doctors, you know, with more and more experience, and they all did the same thing. They grabbed me by the neck, and they twisted like this, and I just felt my entire back flare up, like someone stabbed me with electricity, and my not my heart, but my lungs would stop because of the pain. It was absolutely terrible, and they were like, "Oh, that's a bad sign. Are you sure you don't have meningitis?" And I'm like, "Well, look at the CAT scans. I don't know anymore. Like, some people are telling me it's not meningitis, other people are telling me it is. Like I don't know. You tell me." And they're like, "This sounds like meningitis to me. Let me tell you." And I'm like, "Well, then, God damn it, do something with it." And they would do other new CAT scans, and it was just such a waste of resources. And then eventually they're like, "Listen, you don't have meningitis. Okay, what you might have is an irritation of the meninges. But listen, you gotta go home." I'm like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, like you've stayed way too long. We've been doing chemo to you while you were suffering with your back. Maybe you just need to spend some time at home." And I'm like, "Well, fair enough. That's very nice of you, but like I kind of need this solved. Like I don't know what to do." And they're like, "Well, that's not my problem. I'm sure it's gonna be fine." Oh crap, we died. "I'm sure it's gonna be fine. Just give it time." So they let me go. I went home, and it wasn't fine. The pain got worse over time, and I'm like, "Ooh, like this is bad." And I remember I had to walk a lot because I had to walk to the hospital, and there were many things I had to do, and so even walking, I remember I was walking like a cripple, like kind of sideways, so that I don't move my legs forward and back. It sounds so stupid, I know, but like I was in a lot of pain, and when I was still in the hospital, it was hard for me to go pee. That was one of the most terrible things, actually. I couldn't go pee. I could, but it was just really hard. And eventually the doctors and the nurses gave me this sort of like, it's like a thing where you can pee into. It's like a cup, like made specifically for men's to pee in, anatomically fitting cup for your pee. So I had to use one of those, and then I had to ask the nurse to throw it out, which was kind of embarrassing. But anyway, we got after. Eventually, you sort of you get used to like relying on nurses for things like that. But anyway, that sort of thing didn't stop when I went home. So what happened was, even at home, it was hard going to the bathroom. And I was like, "Oh man," and I remember I had to, whenever I got out of bed, I couldn't just, step out of bed like a normal person. No, I had to like do a whole technique where I'd sort of swing my legs sideways so that, I didn't have to move my back. And sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I couldn't breathe. So when I say that, like, I was in a lot of pain, I really meant it. And it was affecting me psychologically. Like, I didn't want to sit down and eat with my parents anymore. I wanted to lay down in bed all day. I felt completely different to the first time that, oh my God, to the first time that I was allowed to go home. Completely different. Like, I was suffering a lot. And then my mom had a genius idea. She's like, "Why don't you just get a massage so you calm down?" And I'm like, "What? Like a massage?" And she's like, "Yeah, get a massage. Like, so you calm down. Maybe you just need to take like a psychological break." Like, and she's like, "I know this really, really nice old woman who like gives massages to like, older people." Damn, look at this. To older people, you might like it. And I'm like, "Okay, well, I mean, a massage sounds good. I haven't been massaged in so long." So it sounded nice. And I remember, look at this guy. I remember she comes over and I start shouting at her. I'm like, "Where's the bed?" That, I thought all masseuses had like that bed thingy. and that thing that you open up and you just lay down there, and I thought she had one, and she comes in and she was limping. She was all limping, and I'm like, what? Where's the bed? And she's like, I don't have one, but we don't need one. She was so kind, and I'm like, no, where's the goddamn bed? Like, I thought you were a professional, and I was so mean to her. She's like, listen, I promise, I swear, we don't need the bed. All I need is like let's just lay down on like a couch or something like that, and I promise it's going to be exactly the same, even better. And I'm like, God damn it. And I'm like, did you bring the cream at least? And she's like, no, I'm sorry, that I forgot. And I'm like, God damn it. Like, who is this witch who's coming into my goddamn house, doesn't even bring the cream? Like, this day could not get any worse, and I'm in so much pain. And luckily I had massage cream, because I have massage cream. And she's like, this is perfect, like this is the exact cream that we need. And I told her that it's a special cream that they gave me in the hospital. And she's like, it's perfect. And she's like, I need you to just relax a little. I know you don't want to hear this, but just relax a little bit. Just lay down on this little bed. Like, we went to one of the beds in the house. And I'm like, oh, okay. And she's like, okay, I'm going to start massaging your neck. I just want you to, if you want to talk, talk. If you don't want to talk, don't talk. And I'm not going to talk, don't worry. And I'm like, oh. I'm like, man, like, I start talking about my cancer. Because I felt bad for shouting at her. I'm like, I'm really sorry, it's just, I'm going through a lot. And she's like, yeah, they told me that you've got cancer. And I'm like, yeah. Wait, who told you? Your mom told me. And I'm like, yeah, I have leukemia, I told her. And she's like, yeah, well, did you know that I had cancer? And I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, I had breast cancer. And I'm still doing the test, but it looks like everything's all right. And I'm like, that's so weird. Like, that no one had told me that. In fact, I don't think my mom knew that when she hired her. And she's like, yeah, I'm a survivor, and one day you're going to be a survivor. And I remember I was like, this is the first time I'm talking to someone who had cancer. This is the first time I'm talking to someone who's a stranger. And this is the first time, in fact, I'm talking about my cancer to anyone who's not my family. And I was like, I began crying, of course. I'm a crybaby nowadays. And I began crying, and she's like, oh yeah, you're letting it all out. Crying is one of the main things you gotta do when you're fighting this. And I'm like, yeah, I told her I was crying because I felt bad for shouting at her. And she's like, oh, don't worry, I've been through worse. And she explains to me that, in fact, she had been born with a serious back condition. And she had to go through like 30 surgeries when she was a kid. And I was like, of course, I'm like, that must have been painful. She's like, you have no idea how painful it was. And I felt like such a fool, like, because I was going through a lot of pain, but she had to go through it when she was a kid, So what excuse do I have? And sure enough, she told me about her life story and how she had to be strong and brave. And she's the one that convinced me that you have to be brave, more than strong, just be brave. And she'd massage me, and eventually she would tell me, okay, now I need you to sit like, I need you to sit down on a chair with a table in front of you. And I did that, and it was the exact same position that I had to do for the needle thing in my back. So I was kind of scared. And she's like, trust me, this is going to make you feel so much better. And so she massaged like the muscles on the two sides of your, so like the muscles on either side of your spine, they're called the longissimus. She massaged those, and that was painful, but like I knew it was doing something good. So I was like, okay, you know, like massage. And she's like, damn, like these muscles are completely screwed. Like they're very, very they're not soft. They're too contracted. And I'm like, yeah, well, I've been through a lot with the back. And she's like, yeah, I can tell. There's been some kind of trauma here. And I'm like, yeah, I know. So anyway, she stopped massaging me, and spiritually I was feeling way better, but I admit my back wasn't. In fact, it was hurting even more. But I didn't tell her because she'd made me feel better, so much better already. And I'm like, I'm just gonna be brave. I'm gonna be strong, and I'm not gonna tell her that my back is worse now. I'm gonna tell her that, thank you very much, and I did. And she's like, don't worry, trust me, it's gonna be better. And I'm like, that's, you know, what everyone says. I had a feeling in my heart that it wasn't gonna get better. And sure enough, the next day I was in agony again. It was very painful, worse than it had been before. And I was like, I'm never gonna get out of this. I'm gonna live with this pain for the rest of my life. Just like the masseuse had to live with the surgery she had to do to her spine and to her hip. And I'm like, damn, that's okay though. I'll be all right. I'll adapt. I'll adapt. And you know, I was like, I'm gonna start eating with my family again. I don't care about the pain. It was very painful. And oh man, the next day I was getting out of bed, and I remember I was doing my technique, because, you know, I told you there was a technique to get out of bed. Like, it wasn't just, you know, turn around and put your feet on the ground. I had to do a whole rotation thingy. And I do the rotation thingy and I don't feel anything, and I'm like, okay, nailed it. Nailed the rotation technique. But something was different. I start moving my neck and I'm like, holy crap, I don't feel anything. And I was like, whoa. And then I start praying. I'm like, God, please don't tell me this is a dream. I'm like, because when you're sleeping and you're going through this pain, you don't feel any pain. Like, in your dreams, you don't feel it. So I got kind of addicted to sleeping, you know? And I'm like, God, please don't tell me this is a dream. And I start moving my neck. I feel nothing. I move my back, no pain. No pain at all. And I was like, Mom, Mom, get in here. And she starts running because she was all worried. Of course, she saw me in pain, you know, for like a month or something. And she's like, what is it? What is it? I'm like, Mom, look at this. Look at this, Mom. And she's like, oh my God, you can move your neck. And I'm like, Mom, I don't feel anything. I don't feel any pain. And yeah, sure enough, never again did I feel that pain in my back. The massage worked. It was a miracle. To this day, I'm like, I don't know what she did. Maybe it was just my muscles, but you have to understand, it's been almost a month. Like, the muscles weren't decontracting. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was psychological or something, but I was like, no way. And I called the doctor. I'm like, doctor, the pain's gone. And she's like, what was it? And I'm like, I think it was like a muscle thingy. Like, I think my muscles were kind of screwed. And she's like, I knew that. And I'm like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't, doctor. You had no idea what it was. No, it was this witch. It was the witch masseuse that saved me from the pain. It brought it down from a 10 to a 0. And I could walk again. And my appetite came back. And it was one of the happiest moments ever. Like, I don't know if you've been through a pain that's like absolutely incapacitating, but it affects your whole body. Even if like one part of your body is hurting, your whole body is hurting. And I was just like, oh man, like if this ends, like this would be such a huge step And sure enough, it was gone, and I felt so free. And I got like a second chance. Like I got lucky again. This is like lucky moment number 5, I think, from all this ordeal. Sort of, I don't have to live with that pain in my back. I'm never taking 0 pain, like 0 out of 10 pain. I'm not taking that for granted ever again. So yeah, that was the most painful thing. You know, a straight 10 out of 10 in pain. And it lasted maybe 3 weeks in total. And the worst part was that we didn't know what the cause was. But anyway, we're going to end the episode there. I hope you liked it. And I got emotional again. We're just going to have to get used to that, I'm afraid. It's an emotional situation. But yeah, I love you guys. See you in the next episode. Bye.